I'm so pleased that Ross Greenwood is part of the team here at Sky News. I had to bring him back after his burst in the main primetime coverage tonight. Great man, firstly, nice to play on the telly. Secondly, does debt matter or not? That seems to be the question for some, and I think the answer is, does it actually matter? Yes. Does it matter to 25 million people in the country all at once? No.
Well, it's always one of those things, when you take out the debt, it never matters. It's when you have to pay it back. That's when it really matters. And it also matters when interest rates go up. And that really is not factored into this today. It's really interesting to note today whether tonight you saw the pitch for Josh Frydenberg to be a future Prime Minister of Australia. It is always the baton that every Treasurer holds in their knapsack. It's certainly one I would suggest that Josh Frydenberg has. And I've got to tell you, there was certainly no doubt that this government was adamant that the Australian economy would not fall back into recession, that there was going to be plenty of money around. And if you think about the incredible conjuring trick, which is not really a trick, it's just a matter of pure economics, that they were able to double the debt by more than $300 billion over the past 3 years and ultimately pay a lower interest bill by about $400 million or so. That is the incredible part about this. And the funny thing is, they say that they could even go and double the debt again by some $1.6 trillion in total and still not be spending as much in interest as governments did in the 1990s. So that's some of the basic maths that comes out of it, as I say, about the debt. But it also says, Paul, that really, if ever interest rates were to rise, as many householders right now paying $1 million plus for their houses would understand, or much more than that even, they're just holding their breath, hoping these interest rates do stay down for a very long period.
Now, there's a couple of things specifically that I like in the nuts and bolts of it. I like the extra places when it comes to apprenticeships. I like the option for people if they want to downsize from a family home for $300,000 to be able to go into super if you're over 60 right now. Also, this was announced a long time ago. I think it was Scott Morrison actually back as Treasurer who put this in place, which was this instant asset write-off. It started as $50,000 and now it feels like it's sky's the limit. This is the thing that I know that family and friends in small business will turn around and always say to me, "What? I can claim the copier, I can claim the new lawnmower, That's something that is going to be continued for another year. So that's part of my highlights list. But what did you think was good, practical stuff that you give the tick to?
Well, you know something, they were the points that I would look at. A lot of people miss that superannuation element to it. So in other words, you sell the family home as a retiree and you then go back in and downsize. You can take $300,000 of that and drop it into your superannuation fund. And that's a pretty big key, because that gives people an ability to top up that superannuation fund at that time. The other one also is, because this is a jobs budget, really the whole childcare narrative about it, trying to provide more places to give more incentive to families. This is about trying to get more women back into the workforce. I think Sophie would pretty much summed it up about having the women's budget here. I got to help the politician who suddenly decides they're going to have a men's budget. They're going to have a separate paper for just men. I don't think that ain't going to fly under any circumstances, but it works obviously for women's vote and certainly for this government. But it is important to get women into the workforce right now, because while the borders are closed, and remember, they're going to start trying to experiment, they claim in the budget late this year to try and get international students back into Australia. But the reality is they don't see the borders opening until even the middle of next year, and it could be slower than that. And so that being the case, then businesses around the country right now are screaming for labour. It doesn't matter what industry, it doesn't matter what part of the country, every employer is absolutely adamant that they can't get the labour they need because the borders are closed. So the more women you can get to the workforce, the more participation you can get from even older Australians, the more you take pressure off this growing wages crisis that's coming down the track. So as I said, that's something that the government has got to look at and address, and certainly they think the borders opening ultimately will do that, because once they see the borders open, they can see an influx of people into Australia, going back to around 235,000 international visitors coming, living, migrating to Australia, and that really is as big as it was at its peak back about 5-6 years ago.
Now, I remember being a young pup and Peter Costello was announcing a sort of razor-thin surplus and going through budget paper number 1, looking for revenue measures, and saw, billions of dollars that they planned to make out of mobile phone spectrum sale in the following year. And it was this crazy big number. And without that one big number, they were going to get nowhere near surplus. You've seen how the sausage has been made for a long time, and it seems to me that the way they think they're going to get from a $150 billion deficit to a $50 billion deficit is company tax goes up and income tax goes up. What did you see in the nuts and bolts of how they get there?
That's it. And so it really is, remember that half of the government's money comes from the PAYE taxpayer. So the more PAYE taxpayers they have, the more money the government receives. And also the less it pays in welfare as those people come off income support and go back into the workplace. The second thing is company taxes, which are forecast to rise significantly. So one of the hero assumptions, as we've said tonight, in this budget is that business will invest and their investment will increase by 12.5% over the next couple of years. Now, as I say, this is big stuff. And it's all about, as you said, the instant asset write-off that companies with up to $5 billion worth of revenue can now go and build a piece of plant, buy a piece of equipment, invest in Australia and get that instantly written off against their taxes. And indeed, if they were to lose money in that year when they were making that investment, or indeed if they were to lose money, they could go back and claw back 2, 3, 4 years to when they were making profits and get some of that money back to offset the losses this year. So the government really is absolutely keen to make certain that there are a lot of jobs in Australia. And as I say, this is the reason why they continue to spend while interest rates are low. The only problem I would always raise the question of is your children and grandchildren. Will they thank this government? Will they thank this era, this generation for creating such a significant amount of debt right now? Because they might ask, well, what have we got left for that? Now, what the government right now will argue is it's better than being in recession, it's better than having people unemployed, and they're right. But the issue is what's being built, because if you go through the infrastructure list tonight, in this budget, you see really very scarce pickings to create something that is of a lasting legacy for Australia and also for the jobs that might come as a result.
Yeah, I reckon that the grandkids are more focused on the doggy coin value than what's happening.
Probably are. That's exactly
right now.
So true.
Ross Greenwood is our business editor, best in the business by a country mile. His show's on Sundays, and what a thrill to talk to him tonight. All the best, mate. Thank you, and welcome aboard again.
Good on you, Paul. Thank you so much.